Well, we're off and running into Module 5. Last week in Module 4, we looked at African Americans and their experience in this country. Covered quite a bit of historical material. Of course, everyone knows about the African American experience with regard to enslavement. Fewer people understand Jim Crow, what happened after Reconstruction. Reconstruction was the period immediately after the Civil War. Blacks in places such as the South ran for public office. They had the right to vote. I mean, the real right to vote. They actually could vote. But it provoked a backlash. Jim Crow laws and practices were instituted soon after Reconstruction and lasted right into the 1950s. And as you know from some of the material we covered, it was basically an attempt to reassert the superiority of whites over blacks. There were all kinds of restrictions imposed on them: separate schools, separate restaurants, separate water fountains, literacy requirements to keep them from voting, a whole raft of initiatives designed to continue to deny them rights. Of course, we've come an awful long way since then. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed as a response to some of the injustices and as a response and outcome of the civil rights movement of the 1950s and early 1960s. This week we turn our attention to some other groups: Latinos, Mexicans, and Puerto Ricans. And I think there, as we've seen in other chapters and other sections, a number of myths. For instance, contrary to what many people believe, Puerto Ricans are American citizens. They are not members of a foreign country. Puerto Rico is an American territory. So we will look at the Puerto Rican experience. We'll also look at the Latino experience, which includes people from a variety of countries, South America, Central America, and look at what they experienced in coming to this country. We have an entire chapter devoted to looking at the Mexican-American experience, and this is of perhaps special significance in light of the current discussion over immigration and immigration reform. There are many Mexicans who have come to this country, legally and illegally, seeking a better way of life, seeking a way to make a living, coming from a country that has a long tradition, unfortunately, of significant poverty. So we'll get a chance to look at why they've come here, what they experienced when they came here, and of course, as I'm sure all of you know, the United States took some of what was Mexico in the 19th century: Texas, Arizona, New Mexico. So some of them didn't come here. The country sort of came to them after a matter of speaking. So we'll look at their experiences, but also the current conditions that they experience, their educational experiences, economic situation. Many of these individuals live in significant poverty still. And this is a story we've seen play out again and again with minority groups in this country. In coming chapters, we'll see some minority groups that have done better in terms of education and economic well-being. So it's not the case that all minorities have experienced and continue to experience deprivations associated with education and economic achievement. But for this week, we will be looking at some of that and trying to understand better how it happened and think about what can be done to try and change that. Obviously, the better off we all are economically, it helps the entire country. The more productive we are, the more we include everybody as contributing participants in our economy, the more the country will benefit overall. So, as I say every week, I hope you're going to find the material interesting, and I look forward, as I always do, to our discussions and looking at some of your insights and thoughts and considering the topics we're going to cover. So have a great week, and I will talk to you again next week.